Hello, teachers, parents, and educational leaders, and welcome to this episode of Breaking Down the B.E.S.T. Now, during this episode, you will get a peek into the members-only area where I have tons of resources to help you make math fun, make it click, and make it stick. There should be a link somewhere around this video where you can learn more. All right, now that we got that out of the way, let's get to it, and let's break down the standard. Welcome to Breaking Down the B.E.S.T, a video series dedicated to breaking down Florida's best standards for math. So grab something to write with and maybe even a snack. This looks good. And don't forget to put a smile on your face. There you go, I see you. And let's dive into today's B.E.S.T standard. Hello, and welcome. My name is Sarah McCarthy, the creator of McCarthy Math Academy, and I want to thank you for taking time out of your crazy, busy, nonstop schedule to join me as we break down today's standard, which is MA.5.NSO.1.5. MA stands for Mathematics, 5 stands for 5th grade, NSO is Number Sense and Operations, and we're working on 1.5 today. All right, so this one says to round multi-digit numbers with decimals to the thousandths, and we will be rounding to the nearest hundredth, tenth, or whole number. And by whole number, we mean that we're looking at the ones place there. So here we've got numbers to the thousandths place, but we're rounding to the nearest hundredth, tenth, or the whole, the ones place. Here's an example right here that they've given you, and by they, I mean the Florida Department of Education. This document that I've marked up all over, this is a document that is available to the public on the Department of Education website. And I'm just showing you how I use the documents that they provide to help clarify the standards, how I break down these standards to help me create Taking on the B.E.S.T. So hopefully it's helping you as well. Okay, so for this standard, we have some related benchmarks that they're suggesting. They've suggested these benchmarks right here, but I'm actually going to say that these benchmarks over here are place value benchmarks for 5th grade. Definitely have more of a horizontal alignment. These benchmarks have to do with how the value of digits change as you increase or decrease the place value that they're in, how to read and write numbers, how to decompose numbers, how to plot, order, and compare numbers with decimals, and now we're rounding them. Where are they coming from? Well, in 4th grade, they've practiced rounding whole numbers to any place. So if you need some extra practice in helping your students to be able to round, 4th grade also has some great examples. We don't get into the decimals like you do in 5th grade as far as with rounding decimals, but you can refer to that to help get them up to speed of where they need to be. The purpose and instructional strategies. So there are a few things that jumped out at me for this one. That rounding skills continue to be important in later grades as students solve real-world problems with fractions and decimals, like in 6th grade, that standard that they're referring to up there. And also work with scientific notation in 8th grade. So number lines are an effective tool for this type of thinking and help students relate the placement of numbers to benchmarks for rounding. We'll talk about benchmarks in just a second, but number lines are a super helpful tool because they provide a deep understanding of place value and number sense, which is what we want, right? That's that goal. I know that as teachers, we say a lot like, oh, these students, they do not know their place value. They don't have a deep understanding of it. And right now in these standards, they're trying really hard to provide a ton of standards based on place value to give them that meaning. Down here, it says, for example, when rounding 29 and 834 thousandths to the nearest tenth, they may confuse that the benchmarks are this and that. 29 and 8/10 and 29 and 9/10. I thought this was written kind of confusing because those are the benchmarks there, and benchmarks are just saying what comes before and what comes after whatever number that you're trying to round. So the benchmarks are the numbers that come before, so whatever place you're rounding to, the benchmark would be for instance, if you're rounding to the nearest tenth, The benchmark would be the 10th before and the 10th after that number, and then determining which one it is closer to, which we do a ton of in Taking on the B.E.S.T. Here it says the reliance of mnemonics, songs, rhymes during instruction can confuse the students. And I wrote right here, eek! Because if you have been following me for any length of time, you know that I have a rounding wrap that I've used in the past, which is a song, which is a device, a tool to show the process of how you round. However, after studying the B.E.S.T standards, I really like the way that they're focusing in on the number line. So the number line is what you're going to see with Taking on the B.E.S.T. If you have access to my previous program, McCarthy Math 155, I'll show you that there is a place where there is a rounding wrap. But I just want to point out here that the standard from the Florida Department of Education is saying this is going to confuse them. We don't want to rely on that. I'd rather you know how to round using a number line. All right, also, down here for an instructional task that they give you, it says identify which two whole numbers does this number lie between, and these would be your benchmark whole numbers, the one before and the one after. So when they refer to it as a benchmark, that's what they're talking about. Between which two tenths, so you'd round to the nearest tenths place. Which two hundredths, so you'd round to the nearest hundredths place using a number line. Okay. And then there's an example down there for you to check out, but let's go ahead and look at what you have access to with your membership to Taking on the B.E.S.T. So here is the website. You can click right here, members enter here or up there at the tab. Go to Taking on the B.E.S.T, 5th grade. This is NSO and rounding numbers with decimals. Okay, so these are your bronze level resources. Whether you have the bronze, silver, or gold plan, you have access to these. And the bronze resources include the video lesson with the printable student guide right here. Just gonna scroll down so you can see. All right, so there's 3 video lessons and 3 printable guides to go with them. So the first video lesson talks about rounding to the nearest 10th and 100th. And if we click on the printable guide, you can see that we're going to use a number line and place value strategies to show the thinking that's involved here. Your students might need a little bit more space than what's provided on here if they write kind of big, but just to give you a heads up there. But you can see here, we're taking this number, we're going to round it to the nearest 10th and the nearest 100th. We're going to use a number line and we're going to use place value. So 2 different rounding places, 2 different mechanisms to show to round. Okay, the rounding wrap does not exist in here because I wanted to stay true to what the standard was clarifying, and that's what you will find here. Okay, the next one would be rounding to the nearest whole 10th and 100th place. So we're just bumping it up and rounding to the nearest whole. Each one will have a nearest whole, and then we will revisit what we learned with the nearest 10th and 100th. Same thing using a number line and place value. So feel free to preview the video lessons first. If you're like, I don't even know how to go about teaching rounding using a number line, we walk through all of that in the lesson. So they're there for you too to preview. And the third video is estimating sums and differences, which is really the whole purpose of rounding, is we use rounding to help us to estimate. So I wanted to bridge that connection together. So you can see here, use rounding to estimate the sum, use rounding to estimate the difference, use rounding to estimate the sum and the difference of these two. So while this standard does not specifically say, hey, we're going to be adding and subtracting here, I wanted to show how we use rounding because we will use rounding in a later lesson. So let's just connect it now. The silver resources, if you have the silver plan, you have access to even more printables and another video lesson too. So there is the bronze resources for you to always go back to. And then all of your printables are right here, including those from the bronze level printables. You'll see there's the answer keys and the math misconception mystery video, and I'll show you where the problem's located in the printable. So you can see here is the video lesson, because of the icon. If you scroll down, then we have access to the first extra practice sheet. Then the next video lesson where we're rounding to the nearest whole, 10th, and 100th. That's what the standard was calling for. So here's the video lesson, and then you have the extra practice page for that one. And then we're estimating sums and differences, and you have an extra practice page for that. Then we get to the math mission, which is like a math task. We're taking the entire standard and saying, okay, let's put this into a more complex problem where students have to think critically through it. Essentially a math task. So here it says Roger is thinking of a 5-digit number with decimals to the thousandths, and he provides the clues. So you got to use the clues, plug them in, and then part 2, what is Roger's number rounded to the nearest tenth? How can you use this number line to explain your thinking? Okay. And then with the Math Misconception mystery video, here we have somebody named Brianna who has some money in her account, and we have to round it to the nearest whole and the nearest tenth. So the video right here walks your students through the process for this. So first the video will say, okay, stop, solve this problem on your own or in your group, work it out, get your answer. And then you're going to watch 4 characters, which are really just me dressed up in silly costumes. 3 of those characters will make a mistake that students commonly make, and only 1 will have the most reasonable answer. So as they're watching the video, they can just jot down some notes from the characters, and then they'll be encouraged to fill out their detective report on this page, where they'll list who has the most reasonable answer and why. And then for the other 3 characters, what did they do that was correct? Finding the good in what they did, even though they made mistakes. What was their error, and what do they need to know for next time? So it's a really cool way to engage your students in error analysis in a fun way. And then your answer keys, of course, are right there to everything. And then if you have access to the gold plan, you can click this. If you don't, it just won't let you in, and that's okay. You have access to more resources. So you have a mini assessment here with a variety of question types. Okay, let's see the number lines. You can see rounding to the nearest whole, tenth and 100th, which is what the standard was calling for. You've got your answer key to that assessment right there. If you do have the gold membership, you know that you have access to the Breaking Down the B.E.S.T video for teacher. Basically what you're watching right now is right there. It's ad-free. However, these videos are available on YouTube. They just have ads in them. So this makes it's quick to the point. And McCarthy Math 155, this is the program that I created before taking on the B.E.S.T, when we had our standards in Florida that were aligned to the Common Core standards. So a lot of schools and teachers were like, can we still have access to this? And I was like, yeah, I'll just make it part of the gold membership. So you just got to be careful because, like I said, I'll just give you an example here. Understanding place value, rounding decimals. That's what we're doing, right? However, let me scroll down to where it says rounding numbers. Right here, rounding decimals. So you can see if you click on the printable right here, that we're rounding using a rounding wrap. And the B.E.S.T standard specifically says that they do not want you to focus on tips and songs like this. So it is there. If you have the gold plan, you have access to that. And what I encourage you to do is to really try using the number line, really try using the place value strategies here. But if you have students who just are not getting it, then as long as you can keep connecting it to it making sense in terms of place value, connecting the wrap maybe to the number line, then you should be okay. But just don't lean and depend on this. The expectation with the B.E.S.T standards is what it is for the videos for the B.E.S.T, okay? All right, I think that's good. Before we go, I want to remind you that what you do with your life, it really does matter. As teachers, we have the best profession. It is one of the hardest and most stressful professions, in my opinion. However, what we do every day is we are difference makers. We are guiding our future world leaders and world changers out there. So even though we might not be able to see the impact that we make with our students, we have to trust that what we're doing is making a difference. So thank you for all that you do, and I hope that you are doing things that you need to take care of yourself too, because you matter. All right, everybody, that's it for this episode, and I will see you next time. Okay, so I know that I just said goodbye for now, but I'm gonna ask you to do one more thing, okay? If you enjoyed this episode, please consider sharing it with your teacher friends or other leaders in education. That's how I get to continue doing what I love to do, which of course is supporting you all to the best of my ability. All right, for real now. Bye.